Welcome. My name is Mr. Sunarine, and today's lesson is going to look at how can I classify two-dimensional figures based on their properties. Before we get into today's lesson, we're going to be looking a little bit about quadrilaterals. So just in case if you're not familiar with quadrilaterals, quadrilaterals are a polygon with four sides, and you can have different combinations of properties based on how it looks, and it can be broken down into simple pieces. So here, let's say in this category, we have a trapezoid. What's unique about a trapezoid, it has one pair of parallel sides. So we're talking about the top and the bottom side. Parallel sides mean they never touch. And then it could be broken down further into a isosceles trapezoid. An isosceles trapezoid is non-parallel sides are equal. So for example, we have parallel sides, and these sides over here are congruent or equal. So that's what it's referring to. Another type of quadrilateral is called a parallelogram. Just as the name implies, a parallelogram has two pairs of parallel sides. So we're talking about the side on the left and the right, they're parallel to each other, and the one on the top and the bottom. Those are parallel to each other. Parallelograms can be broken down into rectangles and rhombuses. Well, we'll say rhombus, but plural rhombus is called rhombi. So here in a rectangle, they have a unique properties. It's broken down from a parallelogram, but a rectangle has all four angles are equal and opposite sides are equal. So here we have four equal angles. They're all 90 degrees, and the opposite sides are equal. So the top and bottom are equal, and the left and right are equal. With the rhombus, all four sides are equal. So that means this side, this side, this side, and this side are equal. And last, between the rectangle and the rhombus, you can create a square. They both have the same properties. Square has the same properties as a rectangle and a rhombus. So here in a square, we have all four sides are equal and all four angles are equal. And then the last quadrilateral we'll talk about is a kite. There's no parallel sides. However, the adjacent sides, which are called the sides that are next to each other, so these two are congruent and the top are congruent. So this would be congruent to that, this is equal to that, and this is equal to that. Okay, so we're going to be looking at information about quadrilaterals. So we're going to go into our problem. So we're going to justify responses to true or false statements about quadrilaterals based on properties. So the first thing we're going to look at is whether it's true or false. Trapezoids are always quadrilaterals, and quadrilaterals are always trapezoids. Pause the video, think about how you would answer which one is true, which one's false, whether they're both true, whether they're both false. And we're gonna compare your answers on the next slide. Okay, so when looking at this, trapezoids are always quadrilaterals. So that is true. So when we're looking at a trapezoid, it falls under the umbrella of quadrilaterals. So all types of trapezoids are quadrilaterals. If we say the opposite, all quadrilaterals are trapezoids, that wouldn't make sense because quadrilaterals could be any of these combinations. You can have a type of quadrilateral, could be a parallelogram, a kite, a rhombus, square, and so on. The last one is quadrilaterals are always trapezoids. So when we're looking at trapezoids, quadrilaterals are always trapezoids, that is false because quadrilaterals are not always trapezoids. They could be any other figure here. Okay, so hopefully that helps clarify. So when we're looking at a trapezoid, the one above it, like a quadrilateral, would make sense because trapezoids fall under quadrilaterals. Same thing here. Rectangles fall under parallelograms, so all rectangles are parallelograms. Not all parallelograms are rectangles, so know the distinction. Okay, now we're going to move on. Okay, so when looking at this, we have a bunch of different shapes here. All these are quadrilaterals. So thinking about what does this shape look like? And again, think about all the other figures here and see how you would classify it. Pause the video, think about what it is, and provide your explanation over here. We're going to move on. Okay, so what does this shape look like? It is a quadrilateral, and more specifically, it's a trapezoid. And in thinking about how can I use tools to be sure that these are classifications, what properties would I need to confirm in order to classify the shape as a trapezoid? So it is a two-dimensional, it has four sides, so we know it is a quadrilateral. I can see that it's a quadrilateral, but to be sure it's a trapezoid, I can use set square to check if there at least one pair of parallel sides. So here we do have one pair of parallel sides. Okay, now we're going to move on to a bit of review. Okay, so thinking about this flow chart and whether things make sense, I want you to read through this. This can be very challenging, and think about how you would respond to this. Okay, on the next slide, we're going to provide our answers. Okay, so when looking at this chart, we want to go through each of them and see which one would make sense. So for example, if we're looking at something that has a figure that has four right angles and has four sides of equal length, we're talking about a square. Let's say if we're going down to at least one pair of parallel sides, and we see that it's a trapezoid. We could do another one. Let's say if we're talking about two sets of opposite angles, the same size, and it has four sides of equal length, we're talking about a rhombus. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a little bit of true and false. Okay, so complete the chart. Think about, read the statement very carefully. This can be very confusing, and use the flowchart as a guide to help you in answering whether it's true or false. Okay, so pause the video, think about your responses, and we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so looking at each of the responses, for this, it's super helpful to have the flowchart with you to go over the responses. So what I'm referring to is this. This is super helpful, so when you have it as a guide, you can see if it makes sense. And also when looking at these statements, if sometimes you read it the other way around, for example, all trapezoids are quadrilaterals. That's true. But what happens if you flip it? All quadrilaterals are trapezoids? That would not be true. So you can use that as a strategy in answering these questions. Okay, now we're going to move into our summarization. Okay, so how can I classify two-dimensional figures based on their properties? So you want to develop and understand the quadrilateral flowchart and each shape's unique properties. And this is an example of how you can do that and understand each unique characteristic. Hope this was helpful. Have a great day.